What if you could turn lemons into lemonade for your legacy? Welcome this lovely morning. My name is Angelina Carleton, and I have the pleasure to introduce you to Winnie Chan Wang. She is a professor in acupuncture at the Alhambra Medical University. In her private practice, Winnie applies integrative medical approaches to help her clients reduce fatigue, pain, anxiety, fear, and worry. Welcome, Winnie.
Thank you so much for having me on, Angelina, and a big warm welcome and virtual hug to all the people who are turning in today.
Yes, yes. We have listeners that will be tuning in from around the world, mostly under the age of 40, but not completely. Just about 80% are under age 40, whether it's the BRICS nations and so on. So let's just dive right in. So you went through a divorce, and I thought that this topic was so important given the feedback that I have received recently of women starting over, not just women, but also men. But as I mentioned in our preamble, women tend to verbalize their feelings a little bit more. So after your divorce, you faced anxiety, sadness, as well as alienation from your children. And one of your remedies was to turn towards God or Eastern religions, both reading your Bible and asking the universe to serve more in your capacity to show up with your talents and gifts. Tell me more.
Wow. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. So I want to tell you a little bit of the backstory. I was an immigrant from Asia. My parents were refugees. My grandparents were refugees. So what that really means is that there is a lot of trauma in the lineage. And what happens is it's the opposite of legacy. My mother actually grew up in a house that housed, actually prostitutes because they were so poor as refugees, they couldn't find any place to live. So imagine if you were a fish and you grew up in a dirty fish tank, right? So my mom, she was in this victim scarcity fish tank growing up. And guess how I was raised, right? You don't throw any food away, and everything is, you got to save everything. And when I came to this country by myself at 15, literally by myself, right? No father, no mother, no friends. It was another political decision for me to escape to this country. So it was very, very difficult for me.
I just want to interrupt for one moment. I find that so interesting because your self-awareness recognizes the frequencies that surrounded you. And oftentimes our auric energy field, and I'm being a little woo-woo and esoteric, soaks up those frequencies, whether it's epigenetics or other terminology. And then one doesn't realize then when they move through life, what it is that they are projecting out because of what they've soaked in. That's not their fault, but their awareness obviously is a part of their personal agency.
Yes. And, part of my lineage, which is Chinese, 100 years ago, they bind women's feet into these tiny 3-inch shape because it was believed that the smaller the woman's feet, it means the wealthier the family, because she didn't have to farm, she didn't have to cook, she didn't have to clean. She can just stay in the bed or in the bedroom all day. So weakness was actually a symbol of wealth, right? So to show off your daughter is like, okay, how small is her feet? How disempowered is your daughter is something that the father gets to show off. This is how wealthy I am. So bear that in mind in my cultural lineage. It's also believed that daughters and wives, they are, I hate to reinforce the racial stereotype, but Asian submissive it is true. There is a lot of expectation for daughters and wives to be submissive, and that if there was any kind of yelling or abuse, that we would just take it. So with that back picture, when I met my ex-husband, I immediately just acted the way that I thought was expected of a Chinese wife.
Yeah, can I just say one more thing? And for any of the listeners out there, Winnie and I did talk about that. I can interrupt her as much as possible, so I'm not stepping on her toes. One of the things I think that's so important that you just um, hinted at is the fact that sometimes when somebody goes to that divorce, not only do they get to clean up their stuff, but they might also have the opportunity to clean up generational stuff that no one else in their family line ever wanted to look at. Okay, please go ahead.
Absolutely. So I was more disempowered. So let me paint you another back picture, which is at the time I met my ex-husband, I actually was an accomplished individual. I had 2 degrees from MIT, computer science and Sloan School of Management, which is like an MBA for undergraduate. I was working at Goldman Sachs on Wall Street. But there was this expectation, oh, it would be lovely to have a wife to come home to where dinner is on the table. And I thought, oh, okay. So I actually didn't do anything with my degrees, didn't do anything with my Goldman Sachs Wall Street career. And I tried to be a stay-at-home mom. Now, of course, I was never really a stay-at-home mom. I built businesses. I became an entrepreneur. I actually started a Chinese school just for children because I wanted my kids to have everything. So for 19 years, I was the submissive wife that just listened to my husband because I thought that's what a good wife was supposed to do. And somewhere along the line, I was actually in a near-death car accident. So in 2017, I had a near-death car accident. And I remember vividly going into the car accident and watching the car crumble into a raisin and thinking, this is it, I'm gonna die. And at the moment, I was an angry, resentful mother and wife because I had held on to all this anger because I couldn't express or complain about it. And at the same time, I was disempowered. So I have all this fear and anxiety about how the future is going to be. So when I was going into my car accident, I've been living in the past and the future and haven't really lived. I haven't created any legacy. It was the opposite. And so when I had the car accident, it was a wake-up call. 10 days later, I had a second car accident. I was like, oh my God, Winnie, there's no car insurance that can handle if you have a car accident every 10 days. So that's when I started meditating and exploring my spirituality because I realized that I need to connect to what is my soul purpose. What did I come here to do? I didn't come here to be somebody's wife and somebody's mom. I came here with a mission. So as I began to awaken and began to use my voice, that old relationship was too small. And actually, it was very painful for me to come out of that, you know, talk about another way of legacy. I was the first person to get a divorce in my family.
That's
None
making
of my,
history.
exactly, that's the making history. None of my brother's cousins, none of my mother's aunts, uncles, none of my grandparents. Divorce was unheard of in my lineage. I remember just to have the courage to get a divorce was tremendous. I couldn't even tell my mom. I sent her a text message and then I didn't pick up the phone for 10 days because I was so afraid of being the first person to have a divorce. And the shame that I thought I would bring to my mother.
In terms of the backlash.
Right. I'm like, well, all the aunts and uncles and grandparents are going to look at my mom like, oh, you raised a daughter that had a divorce. You raised a daughter that defied her husband and kids and went on to build a legacy of her own, right? So I had so much shame and worry that I would bring trouble to my mother. But the funny thing is, I didn't initiate the divorce. I was actually a victim.
Yeah.
So yeah. So what was really funny about that was my ex-husband chose after 19 years to not do the work to stay married. And so I was absolutely crushed. I cried and felt like a victim. I felt like no matter how much therapy I go to, no matter how many coaches I hire, no matter how much work I do on myself, I just can't keep the marriage together. There was this really, really big hit. Plus, at that time, I was already a Reiki healer, and my ego was absolutely crushed because I felt like, oh, okay, well, you in the daytime go see your clients and you talk about love and light, but you're like an imposter because look at your own relationship. You can't have love, peace, and harmony in your own marriage and with your own children. And it was so hard for me to sit with the data and acknowledge, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, go ahead.
So I just wanted to bring up one of the things you had mentioned is the ongoing jaw pain as well as tight hip muscles. So I think that was kind of a starting point where the breakdown led to breakthroughs. And I wondered if you would share any of the spiritual lessons that came out of that. So I love the fact that you just were so transparent, because a lot of women go through the thought process, the inner conversations of the ripple effect on their family, the judgment from other people, the imposter syndrome, that no matter how uh, an executive position a woman holds, she still comes face to face with, the problems that she might be hiding in her real life that she can't glue back together. So my question for you is around what spiritual lessons came as you were going through the jaw pain, the tight hip muscles, and that mind-body connection.
So what's really funny is I felt like a victim. Oh my God, he dumped me. But actually, it was the best thing that ever happened to me because that was the beginning of creating my own legacy. So I don't know if you've heard this very famous book called The Body Keeps the Score, where basically all of our traumas, our ancestors' trauma, this feeling that I don't belong in this world, right? With all this anti-Asian hate, I don't belong in this country. I'm an immigrant. And it goes several generations back. My parents were refugees, my grandparents were refugees. So we are the opposite of native indigenous people. We're the people who are misplaced. So how very interesting. And all of this is stored in the hips because the hips is about your foundation, isn't it? The fact that you can stand on your ankle, knees, and hips, the things that support all of our organs, our voice, our heart, our lungs, our brain, this is the foundation. So when a person is disconnected from their parents, their ancestors, their roots, then they're going to have a lot of hip, knee, and ankle pain. And so it doesn't matter, actually, whether I have a divorce or not is irrelevant. What's really relevant is the hip pain that I was having every single day. So when I had a divorce, that was actually a wake-up call because it's like, Winnie, what does the data say? You can't ignore that you have all this pain. And what's that's so funny is I'm actually working on my second book. It's called Unlocking Light. So me collaborating with 4 other authors, soul, heart, mind, energy, and body. And I am writing the body chapter, talking about how all these trauma is stored in the body. And, sometimes women wake up and then suddenly they're like, oh, I have breast cancer. I have ovarian cysts. I have a UTI, and they are disempowered. They don't know how it got there. You go to the Western medicine doctor and they just said, oh, maybe it's stress. But actually, there is a reason. It's not that we're disempowered and these cancer and cysts and UTI just show up. It's actually because there's trauma that needs healing, right? So why I really got so passionate into this work was because my first year as an acupuncturist, I helped this lady. She had breast cancer for the 5th time. So chemo come back, chemo come back, chemo come back. And I was like, okay, well, 2 women get breast cancer, and sometimes it comes back and sometimes it doesn't. Why? I really want to help people fully recover and don't have relapses. And the answer is you got to go to the root cause, right? The root cause of why the cancer developed in the first place. And unless you pull out the roots, it's always going to grow back. So that's why I'm so passionate about what I do. And before the divorce, I was a GP in acupuncture.
Yeah, I just want to add to what you're saying that a lot of times women and men too, they don't realize how much they soak up in their body. And where do you go to talk about it? Do you go to the local Starbucks? You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to bring up before you go on is you had to figure out how to heal your body to bring it into balance or to back into balance, as well as to heal your chakras. So instead of pain giving you the ability to manipulate others, and I know you've talked about that in prior podcasts, that sometimes people can do that, and many people fall into it, you chose to no longer carry the trauma in your body. So I know that some of the remedies you mentioned was soaking your feet in hot water at night, as well as acupuncture. And I also wanted you to talk about some other remedies in addition to what you discovered in your practice, whether that was women having cancer multiple times and it coming back, and Western medicine not providing adequate remedies.
Right. This is where I really want to empower all the women, knowing that wellness belongs to the people regardless of your income level. So if you have more money at this time, working with an acupuncturist, working with a talk therapist, working with a coach like Angelina is absolutely worth your investment. Okay. In fact, I'm going to sidebar a commercial for Angelina. I've been to 50 podcasts this year, and Angelina by far ranks the top as the most prepared person who has ever interviewed me, because the list of questions that she gave me really showed how much research she's done on me. So if you're looking to build a legacy, I highly recommend working with Angelina, because you're going to feel so seen, so understood. I think maybe I should work with her too. Everybody work with her. But back to solving all of these problems that are stored in your body. So I also want to give people the empowerment. The only 2 pieces of equipment you need to heal is your heart and your breath, because love melts all blockages. So even if you don't have money right now to work with a coach and acupuncturist, there are resources. There are countless YouTube videos, countless podcasts like you're listening to. And I have a nonprofit where I offer a lot of group classes. If you want to heal, there's no shortage of free things that you can do on YouTube, on podcasts, and come check out my nonprofit where I teach weekly classes. And these are paid by generous donors. So I really want to tell you, don't be shy, okay? Even if you have no money, there's so many free resources out there. And the secret is just in your inhale and your exhale. Because inhale, you can breathe in all the love and light. And when you exhale, you can let go of all this trauma. And so I want to tell you that when you work with a coach, it's like so much easier because we've walked the path. For Angelina, she has created her legacy. For me, I have healed and unlocked my body, and we can hold your hand and help you go from A to B. But even if you can't afford us right now, you can absolutely do it yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that edification. Yes, I think that it's important to point people to the complementary resources that are out there so that they don't feel stuck. I think society needs it more than ever because so much, you talk about the age of transparency right now, so much is bubbling up to the surface. Yeah. And I think that it's really important that people realize that it can be as simple as tuning in to podcasts and videos, that all of the complementary resources that are out there. And also, like you had mentioned, something as simple as soaking one's feet at night if they can't afford acupuncture regarding all those needles, that's something that can begin to relax their body so they don't have to be like this hardened, resentful, bitter because of what has happened to them or in their lineage, in their ancestry. And I know one of the points you also made is sometimes people think that they can do it on their own. And sometimes that's not the best. Sometimes group coaching is an excellent tool to balance it out regarding accountability. And also this idea of even on a one-on-one advisor. Because again, if someone's trying to do surgery on themselves, that's like trying to color your own hair. Sometimes it's best if someone else does it.
Absolutely. There's value in one-on-one because you can feel really, really safe when you're one-on-one, and you can go all the way into your story without reservation, like, oh, I'm hogging the mic time and somebody else needs to share. But there's also value in group coaching because sometimes we don't know, we're not even aware that we have this problem. But when we listen to somebody else with the same problem, then we're like, oh, yeah. When I go to these group coaching, I always get so much out of listening to other people's story. And just like listening to this podcast, if you love it, make sure to leave a 5-star review and share with your friends. Sharing is how we can help each other. And I want to talk about the importance of sharing when something helped you, when this is a very, very fundamental thing that we need to understand. Everything is a vibration, right? So if I judge someone, I'm also judging myself. If I love someone, I'm also loving myself. So if I read a book or if I listen to a podcast episode that really resonated and I give it to my friends, it doesn't cost you anything. It's absolutely free, but it really shows your friends that you care about them. And then you will see, if you care about your friends will care more about you. They will say, oh yeah, Winnie remembered me so much that they forwarded me this podcast episode. Okay, next time I'm going to call her and see if she's available for dinner. I want to tell everybody, now I have 4 science degrees, coming from 2 from MIT and the valedictorian of my med school. I want to tell you, it's not about what I know. Because it doesn't matter if I write the best books, but if nobody reads it, it's as good as I didn't write the books. What's really important, more important than what I know, is who I know, right? It's like networking is such an important part. And that's why I think when we talk about legacy, success is not just how many dollars is in your bank account. It's not about how many people are following you on Instagram. It's not about how many likes you get on the post. It's about how much joy you feel. You know, imagine that you can feel joy 24/7, right? That nobody can rob you, no circumstances can take your joy away. And one way that you can make sure that joy is always with you is by giving joy, by sharing joy, right? Because if you share joy, then you are marinating yourself in the vibration of joy.
Yes, yes. So thank you for that. And I know that you've got an enormous depth of knowledge when it comes to acupuncture, and you include some needles by your bedside in case you need. I know you made a joke on a prior podcast about that. We won't make the joke in this one, but it was a great joke. So on an emotional level, you did have to change the conversation in your head and the way that you think. We talked about it in the preamble of going from victim to victory, or from lemons to lemonade. And you've also mentioned that denial gets a bad rap because, in another perspective, perfected denial serves its purpose as a protection mechanism. So I was curious about what emotions were new to you after your divorce in feeling feelings deeper or for the first time.
Wow, thank you for that question. So everybody knows that forgiveness is a good thing, isn't it? So I have been a student for forgiveness for 4 years at that time. And it doesn't matter whether you believe in God or not. Forgiveness is a gift that you give to yourself. It means that you no longer hold it in your body, right? So a lot of times when I work with women, especially with gynecological GYN, my English, apologize. When we have reproductive issues as a woman, it's because a lot of times we're holding these grudges that we don't even know, and it's buried so deep. 95% of us is run by the subconscious mind. And these things are scripts that we learn from our mothers, our grandmothers, our disempowered ancestors. So imagine, I don't even know how disempowered I am because it goes back 2,000 years of women's suppression. And guess what? We've lived in patriarchy for 2,000 years. What is really interesting, going from victim to victory, is that it's a choice. It's a choice to not just run autopilot. Well, this is the way my mom did it, my grandparents did it, but to really slow down and take breaths and cultivate the awareness and have compassion for whatever that we're feeling, because the truth sets us free. So 1 week after the divorce, because I had already been a student for 4 years, I sat down, I wrote down everything that I could not stand about my ex-husband. He is selfish. He is arrogant. He has anger issues. He has childhood trauma that he hasn't healed. So I made this really long list. And then I cross out all the he and I put I. I am selfish. I have arrogance. I am in my ego. I'm self-centered. I have unhealed childhood trauma. So I went through the motion of taking ownership. I went through the motion of doing all the exercises of using my ex as my mirror and looking at myself. How have I been selfish? How have I been manipulative? How have I been me? And the tendency is to think that I've been there, done that, put a checklist next to it and think that, oh, I have forgiven him. Okay, let me write a letter that I forgive him. Let me write a letter that I'm grateful to him. Check, right? Let me write all the things that he did for me during the 19 years
let me just
together.
for a moment. Yeah, guys love it when they get those letters, by the way. Just kidding. You're not supposed to mail them. Go ahead.
But like, I genuinely opened my heart to find all the grudges that need to be released and find all the things that he did do for me and thank him for it. And then I pretended I'm done. But of course I'm not done, because there are so many layers, right? Why are women paid 77 cents on the dollar? There's so much collective women suppression, this anger that is not beyond me, that is in me. So many months went by, and layers, I still discover, unfortunately, or fortunately, just how much more anger is in my system, right? And this is why I do this thing called heart dance every week. I co-facilitate it with another awesome Tao teacher, because I need to systematically have a safe place to get this anger out of my body and my liver, my organs. Yeah, so that is really interesting. But why denial is also important. You can't heal in one day, right? Rome is not built in one day. You can't heal all your traumas, your ancestors' traumas in one day. So denial is perfect, because literally, if you open the entire can of worms, it's like you can't handle it. It's just we can do one worm at a time, right? So whatever you find yourself in, you know, if you need to take it easy, be in denial, then be in denial. It's perfect. So what I want the listeners to walk away with is, wherever you are perfect, right? If life is too hard and all you can do is put yourself in a bubble bath and listen to soothing music, do that. There's no need to really unpack the trauma if life is so hard. You know, there are days when you should just take a bubble bath, listen to music, and do nothing else.
Yeah, and I think one of the points you also made about denial in prior podcasts that you've been on in my due diligence was that sometimes if somebody just needs to function, sometimes they may not be ready to process reality and the truth and the layers of the truth and the ancestral stuff and the generational stuff and the societal collective stuff. Sometimes that denial just lets them function another day until they're safe enough emotionally to be able to look at it.
Exactly. So I wanted to share something about parental alienation, because I think going through divorce is difficult. And a lot of the times, children feel like they have to choose between team daddy and team mommy. And even if you're not divorced, maybe you have a teenager at your house, and your teenagers just give you the middle finger and be like, I don't want to talk to you, mom. Who are you? You're so annoying. Stop telling me what to do, right? In a parent's journey, just like there is daytime and nighttime, there's sunrise and sunset, there's new moon and full moon. Our relationship with our child is not a flat line, and it's not just up and up and up and up. It's actually a cycle, right? In nature, there are cycles: new moon, full moon, new moon, full moon. We have the 4 seasons. So understand that in your relationship with your child, whether you're married or divorced, there's going to be ups and downs and ups and downs and ups and downs. And oh my God, the legacy I really, really, really want to leave behind right now is to really help mothers, especially if your father is also okay, but especially mothers. If you're in the down cycle in your relationship with your child, whether because she's a teenager or because you're going through a divorce and, you know, the child is shutting the door and doesn't want to come out, it is the most painful time. You're like, wait a minute. I breastfed you for 17 months. I gave you everything. I sacrificed my career. I did all of these things, went to PTA meetings, and you shut the door and pretend I don't exist. Right? So this journey back to the top is where I really want to build my legacy on, because so many women are stuck with their teenagers or stuck in their divorce, and they don't know how to navigate this downturn. But let me tell you something, downturn is followed by upturn, because the night won't last forever. The night won't last forever. So no matter how challenging your parent-child relationship is right now, it's gonna get good. But you need to show up to do the work so
That's
that
what I
it can
wanted just
get
to add,
good.
that they also need to do the work so they don't get stuck in the grudges, because that is so insightful. I just wanted to add that a lot of times our parents and grandparents, et cetera, don't even realize all the grudges that they're holding, because it gives them control regarding the things that they can't control in society.
Yes.
Which is unfortunate, because if the only thing that they can control is to be bitter and to hold those grudges, they will do that till the day they die, unless they become self-aware. So I just wanted to recap for a moment for any of the listeners. So in terms of some of the internal conversations that you had to change, taking ownership, you had mentioned forgiveness is the second one. The third is letting go of those grudges or facing the anger in order to release it. Did I miss anything?
You nailed it. Absolutely. A+ student. I can tell you must be an A+ student. I just want to, especially for all the women listeners out there, explain that women are more prone to anger. And for all the male listeners out there, male are more prone to fear. And there is an anatomical, biological reason for this. And there's also a societal suppression piece of this. So let me unpack the women's side first. So in traditional Chinese medicine, the liver stores menstrual blood, and it also is negatively impacted by anger. So because women lose menstrual blood every month, we become more easily impacted by anger. So biologically, women are more easily frustrated, women are more easily stressed, and women are more easily angered. And this has nothing to do with you personally, but just because we menstruate, right? Now, the society piece is we expect women to smile, to be like Hello Kitty, to be sweet, wear this people-pleasing nice girl mask, and not be a bitch or boss lady.
I
And
think
so
it's called demure, supportive, and helpful.
okay, but society suppress women from expressing their anger. So women, and that's what I alluded to, have all these reproductive issues like breast cancer, ovarian cyst, UTI, because we are more prone to anger, and we don't, so society doesn't allow it. And now I want to unpack for the men. Men, so in traditional Chinese medicine, semen is associated with the kidney system. And the kidney system is impacted by fear. So I have clients come to me, they watch 1 hour of porn per day before COVID. And during COVID, they started watching 3 to 4 hours of porn. And they unfortunately lost a lot of their essence. So first of all, no judgment at all on whether you watch this at all, but please do not lose your essence, because when you deplete your essence, that's why men have receding hairline. And I also treat a lot of male reproductive issues, such as, urinary bladder sensitivity. And as men age, a lot of them have urination challenges. And it all comes from not knowing this negative feedback loop with fear. And a lot of men fear women. They fear relationship. They fear talking about their feelings, right? This is the society piece now. Men are expected to be strong. They can't be vulnerable. They can't share their fears with anyone, right? So men have suppressed fear and women have suppressed anger. And that's why we have such a challenging landscape of relationship, isn't it?
Well, I think people
Right?
need to be able to vocalize all of what's underneath the surface of the water. Absolutely. I'm aware that men fear getting older and they don't talk about that a lot. Thus the sports car when they go through the midlife crisis, etc. Yeah, there's actually some interesting people on YouTube. Santos Bonacci talks about that men ought to keep that fluid inside of their body. But let me move on to the next question, if that's all right.
Yes.
Okay, so there can be an unconscious culture of conditional love, no matter the income level of the family, whether they're affluent, they're working class, etc. Even if family members don't mean to blackmail one another in one form or another. Perhaps it's to teach the next generation loyalty, but other times it can unconsciously teach them to compromise their integrity or their core values. I think you've talked about it before as like, different attachment styles versus authenticity, and then being able to work through that as one grows up, evolves, transforms. So how did you see this pattern around punishment and manipulation? Because it just doesn't happen in Asian families or rich families or crazy rich Asian families, but on bump. Whether it's performance-based or not, because a lot of families, especially if there is money, performance, all of a sudden, oh, if Winnie does great, it makes the family look amazing. So how do you unpack all of that, Winnie?
Yeah. So first, I want to tell you I was a former queen of, I don't want to use manipulation, but rather I'm going to use the word programming. So I used to use Excel a lot, and I have a computer science degree. And if you've ever done any computer programming or use Excel, you do a lot of if A is true, then B, if not C. You do a lot of this kind. That's fundamentally what programming is. You have a binary tree, and this is the way it works in medical field also, diagnosis. Is it A or is it B? Okay, A. Then you go, is it A or B? So we ask a lot of these if-then statement, and that is the left brain, right? The analytical brain. So a lot of the times, parents unknowingly are manipulating their children, say like, okay, if you finish your chores, then you can get 10 minutes of screen time. Okay, if you finish this plate of broccoli, we can have ice cream, right? So basically, every if-then statement comes from the left brain. And in programming language, we really literally call this condition. So understand that if you had a parent who talked to you in this way when you were between 0 and 7, you can experience your parents as conditional love. If I listen to my mom and do what she asked me to do, then I will get the reward. Then she will love me. So for example, let's say what I really want to do is play Legos. Let's say I'm 4 years old. But then my mom says, okay, if you turn off the lights now, we can spend an extra 10 minutes singing songs or reading or cuddling or whatever. Now I had to compromise the fact that I was actually interested in Legos to please my mom, because she's offering me a reward, right? So a lot of us were trained to be obedient to our parents and trained to experience love as conditional. And that's why we have a whole society built around worth. I gotta make money. I gotta look good. I gotta bring honor to my family. I gotta look good on Instagram. Like, I gotta put my makeup and have nice hair and wear nice clothes. And I have all this pressure to meet expectations so that I can be loved. But what we get to do, and what I am reinventing, right? Remember, I said the legacy is I want to help parent-child come back on top. A lot of children, they don't know that they experience conditional love. Parents don't know they gave conditional love. So to navigate back from the bottom to the top is the parents, they get to look at how I have given my child conditional love and really take ownership. Because every time I give my child conditional love, I'm asking them to compromise their authenticity, their integrity, in order to be obedient and do what I want them to do instead of what they want to do. Right? So they don't want to come near me because they feel like their integrity is compromised when mom is always asking them to be someone they are not. So to come back on top on the unconditional love, I get to look at how am I doing this to myself? Winnie, if you go to the gym, then you can have fries. If you don't go to the gym, you can't have fries, right? Like, how often do we talk to ourselves like that? I have to earn what I eat. I got to hit the gym first, right? How we've learned how to talk to ourselves like that from our parents.
Yeah, absolutely. What I find so interesting about that is it's either teaching someone to trust their inner voice or ignore their inner voice. And it's very unconscious, like you brought up, it's like the waters that families swim in, and they don't even realize it. Even if they've got adult children, adult offspring, it could be within family businesses, even not in family businesses. But it's so interesting because if somebody grows up and they have never had to trust their inner voice, and then they become 18, or let's say they're 40 and in succession they get that family business and they've never had to listen and trust their inner voice, and now you're asking them to, they have no back channels for it. They have no, as you would say, computer programming to lean into regarding the history of that program.
Exactly. You nailed the word trust. If I want my child to trust me, I get to trust my child. And if I want to trust my child, I have to trust me, right? So the work starts with inner work. It starts with how can I trust me? And how can I find acceptance that no matter what I do, it's good enough, right? Just really trusting that whatever I do is good enough. Whatever my child do is good enough. Right? One example I want to give is screen time. A lot of parents are like, oh, I can't trust my kids with screen time. I got to regulate it. So here's a question, right? Yeah, you can teach your kids how to regulate sugar and how to regulate screen time. What happens when they go off to college? Right? And that's why so many people do drugs and sex and alcohol, and they go have all kinds of addiction. They get the college 15, all of a sudden they pound themselves with sugar and they have anxiety and depression. And so it's like we didn't give our child a chance to make mistakes and learn from their mistakes. We don't trust our child to self-regulate with sugar or screen time. Right? So I am of the philosophy, whatever I want to teach my child, it's not with my mouth. It's my action. My actions speak louder than words. So if I want my kids to get off the screen and go swim in the ocean, I put down my phone and go swim in the ocean. I don't tell them to put down the screen. I go garden, I go cook, I go sing, I go dance. Whatever I want my kids to do, I don't tell. I just do. I model it for them.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I also wanted to bring up a point to piggyback off of what you're saying. And I think a part of it is parents and children, all the people at the table, also can consider getting curious about other people. Like you brought up the metaphor about the Legos before. So Winnie, why do you want to do Legos another 5 or 10 minutes? And then let the child or teenager or adult explain why the Legos are so amazing compared to what people default into, in the default being, well, let's just get it right. We have to be in bed by 9 p.m. for those kids, or we have to get it right because Winnie has to get that degree, or we have to get it right because, only 3 hours of screen time is appropriate, compared to being curious of like, well, what is that opening up for you? I think a lot of times people don't like ask the questions across the table to get to know the perspective of the other person, even that perspective could even be worthwhile because they're already ready to pass judgment on that perspective.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's what I recently did is, what if I get curious about why they're on their screens? And then I found out that actually my daughter is playing this game called Genshin. And actually, it's a very good game. You have these things called dailies, which build discipline, hard work. And then there is collaboration, teamwork, gratitude, and people coming together. And one of the things that I find is people are always judging other people as better or worse, as opposed to appreciating them, right? So one day I was swimming in the ocean and I saw two brothers splashing water at each other. And then it reminded me of my two daughters playing video games together. And they're like, hey, have you done your dailies yet? No. Can you go do this? It's like some people play Barbie, some people play video games. And what if we remove the stigma and just see, okay, is there love between the sibling? Is she going to school, getting her homework done? Is she, it's kind of like if she's getting A's and there's no complaint from the teachers, I don't need to regulate how many hours of video games they're playing. I don't need to put my values on them. And by not judging them, I make myself an emotionally safe place for them to come to me. And I know that they know that no matter what happens, mom is a free space, safe space that they can come to.
Yes, yes. So I have my next question, as in the power of words. And thank you for sharing that, by the way. People oftentimes do not realize that they can place curses as well as blessings on one another, or they may realize it. And that's a whole other conversation if they're, let's say, intentionally placing a curse on someone else, for whatever internal benefits that are to that. Yet healing has layers. So I wondered what else worked for you in being able to learn from what one might call the dark night of the soul, so the pain could no longer be stored in your bones. Because another thing you mentioned is you got to release your shoulder pain and the burden of thoughts. So the question again is around no longer holding on to the pain, so it's no longer stored in your bones.
That is really, really great. One time I was in a class with this quantum physicist, Dr. Rulin. She's the author of Tao Science, and I absolutely love that book. It talks about karma, but it explains it in scientific language, right? So words are really powerful. If I don't trust my children, if I have fear about them, I'm actually cursing them. So for example, if I fear, if my daughter doesn't put down her screen, she is going to go blind because she is going to, have so much heat and toxin in her eyes. So the more I fear, the more I'm actually cursing my child to stay in the addicted to video games condition, because what is carrying in my vibrational field is I fear my child eyes are going.
And then you draw it in.
Exactly. So this is the thing about manifestation, is the words manifest, right? So what I fear, I also manifest. So I do not want to curse my children. So therefore, I need to let go of this fear that my child is going to do bad things. My child can't put down the screen. My child's eyes are going to go blind. So what I get to do is come from a blank sheet of paper. So blank sheet of paper, meaning I am going to come from source. What can I do to guide my daughter into doing other things and giving the eyes some rest? Maybe it is washing some strawberries and asking her to come eat some strawberries, right? Maybe it's putting on a song and say, hey, I'm putting together this playlist. What do you think about this song, right? So instead of parenting from a place of fear and scarcity and victim, it's parenting from this place of I am powerful, I am loving, I am source, and I am unconditionally patient and accepting in my love. And I really believe that love melts all blockages, and I can, bring my daughter in. Maybe I'll bake something. Maybe the smell of cookies will distract her. So it's really coming from, if I love my child unconditionally, I'm going to, like honey attracting bees, I'm going to bring the bees into me by being honey.
So tell me then, because I'm not a medical professional, why would the pain get stored in the bones? Is it because of the frequency and the vibration?
The pain is actually stored in every layer of our existence, and not just the bones, the ligaments, the tendons, the organs, so like heart, liver, lung, kidney, this information is stored everywhere. So imagine if you were a fish growing up in a dirty fish tank, right? Your mother keep using these if-then statements. Okay, if you do this, then you get this reward. If you don't do this, you're going to get this punishment. You grew up in conditional love, and so your body is grown, soaking in on this victim scarcity mindset, right? So the good news is you have free choice. With every exhale breath, you can actually change. There's science that shows that, for example, red blood cells are replaced every 3 months. And whatever it is, like even our brain, even the wires of our brain, there's neuroplasticity. So even if you have ADHD brain, which I used to from my childhood trauma, whatever you have, even neurodivergence, even an 80-year-old man with stroke, there is still neuroplasticity in the brain. So as long as we're breathing, there is still hope.
Good, good. How did you learn to open up your heart again after divorce so that it would not have walls that block new opportunities or good things?
Okay, this is so funny because I'm very, very practical woman. So practical, right? You wouldn't expect less from a woman with 4 science degree. If you open your heart, you put in half the effort and you get double the results. It's like, I don't have to work for money. Money just comes to me. Right? Wouldn't you want that? Like, I don't have to work for it. The good thing just come to me. So I know that keeping my heart open is the most important thing. It doesn't matter you're divorced or not. It doesn't matter you're in business or in health. Keeping your heart open is how you can receive. And I know that this is so hard for people. You know, let's talk about why women are paid 77 cents on the dollar. A lot of women, they want to blame the outside world. It's like, oh, these men, women fairly. But what we learn in, you can call it traditional Chinese medicine or spiritual world, is as within, is the inside is a reflection of the outside. So if we're paying women 77 cents on the dollar as a society, that means we don't value the feminine inside. And valuing the feminine means resting. It means playing. It means receiving. Okay, so a lot of us, we're good at giving. We're good at talking. But are we good at receiving and listening? Right? So I'm actually on a 21-day challenge to wear dresses and skirts for 21 days because I really want to connect to my feminine. So yeah, I would really love if you guys want to try. What if I wore a skirt and dress for 21 days and try to really honor the feminine inside me? And yeah, so I really welcome you to leave a feedback. Maybe you can leave feedback on Angelina's podcast about the results of your 21-day wear dress or skirt challenge. You know, this is something I learned from the indigenous people, actually. So one time I attended a Native American circle, and I learned that women who were wearing pants are not allowed to be in the circle. And that's because we women, we are carrier of the feminine. We're the carrier of Mother Earth. So in order for masculine and feminine to be in balance, we need the woman to wear skirts in these indigenous circles. And I was like, wow, this is ancient wisdom. So just for an experiment, I thought I would wear dresses and skirts for 21 days. And yeah.
It does have an effect. It definitely does have an effect. Yes. And I think especially when you spoke about the working world, I think many times women have this idea that the more masculine they are in the professional world, they're going to hunt the deer metaphorically and bring home the bacon metaphorically. Okay. And then they sometimes don't know how to pull back from that or allow themselves to receive, which is a feminine. So I'm glad that you can speak into that, because after divorce, sometimes individuals, they just shut down. They put up that brick wall and they'll never be heard again. So I just have a couple more questions before we wrap. In difficult conversations, you learned the calmer you communicated boundaries, the better the outcome. So I think that is a great relationship skill. And would you just speak momentarily into this insight?
Yes.
Especially, I know you've spoken about like conversations with parents.
As it turns out, we are all, in every relationship, there is an anxious and then there's an avoidant. So it doesn't matter if it's with your parents or with your child. There's one that's more anxious. Ooh, I want to talk. I want to talk. And then there's one that's more avoidant. I want to back off. So actually, it doesn't matter whether you're the anxious one or the avoidant one, right? What I really mean is, what if we give up our fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, the stress response? When we come from a place of groundedness, which starts with lower abdominal breathing, it doesn't matter if the other person wants to push you away or the other person is trying to come into your space and find something to attach and grab onto. When I stay grounded, I'm going to ground the other person also. So it means that they also can give up the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. So that is the foundation of a relationship. You know, one thing that I learned in relationship is it takes two people to make a relationship work. It only takes one person to change the relationship. So that is very empowering because it doesn't matter if it's a husband-wife relationship, a parent-child relationship, a boss-employee relationship. You have the power to change the dynamics in any relationship.
Very cool. So since this is a Design Your Legacy podcast, what would you like your legacy to be and what values do you get to honor?
I really want to empower everyone. There is free choice in every moment. And that when we're grounded, we are powerful and we can trust that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. What values do you get to honor? I mean, I'm hearing, evolution, integrity, being true to yourself, courage to face the fears and walk through the anger.
Calm. Calm. One word.
Calm, calm. Yeah.
I think that's so needed in society right now.
Oh, compared to being raging. Yeah, all of the vitriol language on social media, and yeah, if somebody thinks differently, then we're going to tear them down. Yeah, whether it's within a family unit, a family business, or in the society as a whole. What other values? I'm going to push you a little bit here, Winnie.
Beautiful.
Beauty, okay.
It starts with really appreciating the inner beauty and the outer beauty, right? The more I find myself beautiful, the more I can find other people beautiful.
Okay. So perspective, gratitude, appreciation. How about one more?
Power.
Okay. Okay.
You really have the power to rewrite your life, to build your legacy. You really have source power to make anything happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know one of the things that makes you the happiest is laying out in the sun
Yes.
like a lizard. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is beautiful. Okay. So
That is the secret to power, by the way.
laying out in the sun or no?
Because like the iPhone, we need to charge it.
Oh,
Where does power come from? Right? The power doesn't come from my ego. If I say I'm money, I'm money, I'm money, I'm love, I'm love, I'm love, I don't actually become power, money, or love, right? A lot of people just chant, I am love, I am money, and think that that's happening. No, I have love and I have power because I have charged myself with the power of the universe, with the love of the universe. And in order for me to charge my batteries, I need to lay out like a lizard and just be in the sun and soak up that universal love, the universal power.
and
Right?
receive it.
Exactly. So it's not that I am loving, I am beautiful, I'm power. It's that I receive beauty, love, and power from the universe. I'm simply a vessel, a channel. I receive it first and then I give it, right? So I actually am empty. I don't have, but then I receive. And so that's what you see.
The happiness and the high vibration of the sunlight, the source. Absolutely. So let's say a final question before you share your website. You have an opportunity to design a hardcover coffee table book of your holistic legacy. What will be in it to share with others and pass on to your beneficiaries?
Yes, the front cover is definitely victim or victor. You choose.
That's lovely. Yes. And any favorite photos you might include in this hardcover coffee table book?
I think I'm going to have a picture of laying in the sun.
Hey, well, that's wonderful. I know that that then would be modeling it. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's more than who Winnie is on paper. She's known by her actions and how she lived her life, more than degrees and so forth. And to close us out, what's a good website if somebody wanted to learn more?
Yeah. So if you want to work with me privately, my website is mindfulhealingheart.com. I have group programs and also individual coaching. And if you want to check out some of my nonprofit resources, that's lovect.net.
That's lovely. Thank you. I just want to share my appreciation that you have spoken on the subject of legacy. I think that you brought a lot of wisdom, especially because you walked through some of the hardest parts of rebuilding your life after a divorce. And a lot of times I mentioned in the preamble, some women just shut down. They become resentful that they have to start all over again. Maybe the pie was split in half, so they have less resources, and then they feel that they have to keep up with the Joneses, and they don't realize that this could be an amazing opportunity to grow again. And either you could embrace it, lying out in the sun, happy as a lizard, or that bitterness and the grudges could lead their life as their North Star for their remaining years. And if there are children, then their children watch that example. And I just thought your experience was so insightful that you could speak into an experience. So thank you for being a guest.
Yes, this was so magical. Definitely share this podcast with all your friends. And yeah, hope to work with you again soon.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to read out the closing paragraph real quick. Okay. In closing, I'm Angelina Carleton, the hostess of the Design Your Legacy podcast, as well as the founder of Legacy Planning, a boutique advisory firm based out of Beverly Hills, California, but international in those I consult. I hope to dive deep into subjects that can help a person define, develop, and execute their legacy, and continue to scour the landscape for those who can be great resources to every dimension of your legacy. For many listeners, there can never be enough education or preparation in the moat or moat around your castle. Whether you find yourself a new wealth or generational wealth as well, may the content on this channel be an anchor in any storms ahead. We do our best to provide original content for your emotional and intellectual curiosity. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you're tuning in on Apple Podcasts, please remember to rate and review. Or if you're watching us on YouTube, please remember to subscribe, like, and feel free to comment or reach out. So thank you so much for joining us this week. And thank you, Winnie, for speaking into your legacy.